Let's continue on our football talk, and we're going to bring in Paul Finebaum because we got to talk some college football. And new Michigan football head coach Sherrone Moore could be facing a level 2 charge from the NCAA in connection to the school's spying scandal from last season. You know, Moore allegedly deleted 52 text messages with former Wolverine assistant Connor Stalions, who was at the center of the supposed spying operation. All of this is detailed in a draft of the NCAA's notice of allegations, of course, obtained by ESPN. Paul Finebaum, he joins us here now. And Paul, give me your reaction to all of this.
I thought this was over last year, but apparently it's not. And the reason why it's not is that the NCAA takes forever to do anything. So they're just now getting to the disposition of this case. So where is it going? I don't think it's really going anywhere because the NCAA doesn't have a lot of teeth. Does Sherrone Moore look bad deleting text? Of course he does. I mean, everybody knows that that's not the answer because there's always a way to find out these things. But I don't think this really ultimately is going to mean very much because the NCAA is almost powerless. Why is it powerless? Because the second it does something, there will be an army of lawyers trying to get injunctions, and they will succeed. The NCAA's track record in court is worse than the Carolina Panthers on the gridiron. They have no chance against anyone. So I think ultimately, whether this sounds serious, whether people want to make a big deal out of this, it's going nowhere. The biggest part of all this is going to come in about 3 weeks when Netflix has a special on Connor Stalions where he tells all, we'll all react the next day. But ultimately, Sherrone Moore will stay as the coach. He may miss a game against some directional MAC school, but ultimately it won't affect last year's title, and it's not going to affect their chances of making the playoffs this year.
I'm not so sure that anybody really cares anymore with the idea of vacated wins. I've seen a lot of the discourse since ESPN's reporting came out about the notice of allegations that Michigan should be stripped of their national championship title from last year, that the Big Ten title should go away. This is 2024, guys. Like, do we really think that they didn't win the games? I know that everybody outside of Michigan, that whole Michigan versus everybody mentality that they like to carry on, they all want to see that to happen. Ohio State wants to see that happen. But it just doesn't change the fact that they were the best team in college football last year, regardless of what was happening behind the scenes. But I will say, in reading what was seen in the notice of allegations, no one's hands are clean. Connor Stalions' hands are not clean. Sherrone Moore's hands are not clean. I mean, who among us has not deleted 52 text messages? I mean, come on, are we serious? That happens at the day the notice of allegations comes out last year? You cannot tell me that, oh, it's just a random thing, like I delete all my messages. Come on. That is the CYA move of all time. And I wanted to bring up something that Paul said about the NCAA and just the toothless nature that the governing body in college athletics has. What does it not have? It does not have subpoena power. And that was one of the things that Jim Harbaugh what we know about Jim Harbaugh not giving over his personal cell phone within this investigation. What more can they really do when this thing actually gets to court, if it gets there, considering we saw what happened last time around when the restraining order was put in? Jim Harbaugh gets suspended for 3 games. Like, if Sherrone Moore gets suspended, it cannot be any more than what Jim Harbaugh was suspended for last year. And I would think it'd probably be like 1 or 2 games at most. And the idea of a show cause seems a little far-fetched at this point.
So it begs the question here, Paul. You hear Courtney talking about a punishment. What should the punishment be? Because I remember Harbaugh last year, was it the first 3 games of the season, he kind of stepped away, and then at the end of the season, they punished him 3 more games. What do you think should be the punishment for Moore, considering he got rid of the text messages, whereas Harbaugh, he wasn't even trying to he didn't even want to work with the investigators last year with the NCAA.
I think the ultimate punishment should be that he'd have to spend a Sunday afternoon at a Verizon store waiting to get served, because I was doing that a couple of weeks ago, and that's worse than anything the NCAA can do. Seriously, guys, and Courtney, they can't really do anything because this train has left the station. And remember something very important here. Charlie Baker, who's the president of the NCAA, after the game last year in Houston when Michigan beat Washington for the national championship, he said, I feel like Michigan won fair and square. He probably didn't believe it, but he did say it. And any attorney is going to hang their hat to that as being the final arbiter of this case, because really, you just can't send somebody to jail anymore, the NCAA. And you mentioned the 3 games about Harbaugh. That was for something that happened during COVID, and they talk about a repeat offender like this is the Pony Express in the 80s and SMU, and the death penalty is coming down. The NCAA just can't do that. There was a case a couple of months ago where the NCAA was simply investigating the University of Tennessee. They went to court and just knocked the NCAA out of this solar system, and no, we haven't heard anything since then, because the NCAA is really toothless. There's so many legal precedents against them, and they don't want another one. So ultimately, they'll negotiate something after a lot of screaming. Sherrone Moore will sit out of practice. He'll skip a game, but it won't be any more than that.
Paul, what do you think is the ceiling for this Wolverine squad? You remember last year they kind of used this as a galvanizing thing. As Courtney pointed out, it was Michigan against everybody. What's the ceiling for this squad then?
I think they're on the bubble of making the playoffs. I would say 9-3 right now. And remember, their second week of the season, they have a home game against Texas. I mean, if they can win that game against a top 5 team, then they have a fighting chance. I don't think they get past Ohio State. Later in the year, that game is in Columbus. They have a couple of other really tough games, but they can get close, and this is not going to get in their way.
What this is going to do is make both sides double down. So the side who believes Michigan cheated, that Jim Harbaugh knew everything that was going on, that everybody else. I mean, 58 games to scout in person this operation that Connor Stallions had orchestrated. You cannot tell me that nobody else, they just didn't know where he was 58 times. Are you kidding me? This should change the balance of power in college athletics, the way that we have seen conference realignment do it over the last couple of years. I understand the rules, and based on previous resource gaps, that college football scouting has not been allowed. It's been illegal, so that's why some people like Connor Stallions and the Michigan football program went about this in their own way. It's 2024. The way that college athletics shakes out, if you have the resources to send your people, to send your staffers to another opponent to go scout, legally doing it, this should lead the NCAA to trying to change its rules, to go up to its membership saying, is this something that you would like to be in position to do? Because the whole idea before was that, a Michigan might have the resources for this in the Big Ten, but Maryland might not. We've got to start playing, stop with the whole level playing field thing, because not every institution based on endowment, based on resources within the athletic department is going to be equal. You're just never going to create that sort of level playing field. So if you do have the resources to do this, then go to the NCAA, go to your member institutions, try to figure out a way to make this happen so we don't have all of this seedy stuff under the table, creating the biggest storyline in college football with less than a month of the season.
Paul, leave it to a Chicago person, because you're listening to Courtney. It reminds me of Mark Grace. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. So your thoughts?
Well, one thing I remember about last season, I was standing on the sidelines at the Rose Bowl in overtime when Nick Saban, in his final play as a head coach, tried to run it up the middle against the best defense in college football. All the Connor Stallions sign stealing and scouting in the world wasn't going to help Alabama or Michigan on that play, because I knew what the play was. You knew what it was at home. So in the end, Michigan won because they were great last year. And the NCAA is the last place, other than the federal government, I would ever go for help on anything.
Paul Finebaum, we appreciate you, Paul. Thank you for your perspective.
Thank you.
Give me something.